discussion. So
Yeah.
I've read the articles. Basically, it's the same incident in this case. So, for the purpose of our discussion, we're talking about a family whose car got carjacked right from their driveway when the mom came home. She was about to get the toddler out, already had her other child out. She was pregnant at the time, and she got beat up, run over, and the child was kidnapped. They contacted the police, who then contacted the Volkswagen GPS tracking provider, whose rep refused to divulge the location because the family did not pay for that portion of the solution. They didn't want to be tracked on a regular basis. It was $150. And they had to have a back and forth discussion until finally the family did go ahead and pay it. They're battling everything in court today. They were able to find the child 20 minutes later, but this caused a further 40-minute delay going back and forth between this. So when is it that safety becomes in effect? When is it that, you've got exigent circumstances and we should consider the life of the child over $150 fee?
Totally.
And I think Lynn and I can see both sides of it because we've been in this industry for so long. Yes, there's no clause saying that you can have this. In fact, I think there were things in their contract that specifically said, unless you pay this subscription, we can't help you. We can't do anything for you. And I get that. That's terms and conditions. It can hold up in court. Mm-hmm. Then you bring the ethical side into it, and that could flip the switch very quickly. So, right. Lynn, what are your thoughts?
And the police involvement as well. There's a tool there to find a missing child that may be in danger. When the police contacted both companies asking for the information, should they have turned it on, found the child, and then turned it back off again? Mm-hmm. To me, that would have been a simple solution. However, how much power do the police have to have your tracking turned on? That could be an issue as well.
So who has the final authority there, if I may ask, like you were saying there? So who has that authority to say yes or to say no?
Apparently that level of the police did not. I don't know if they'd have to make it federal and bring in the FBI, because technically it's a missing persons case. That would have taken more time, though, and you don't know what could have happened to the child. I think it brings up an even bigger picture, to be honest with you. Right now, if we all have our cell phones, whatever country you're in, you have some version of 911, and that overrides everything. Whether you have your GPS on or off, it will override, it will make the call, it will work. Maybe there should be some sort of a, lobby to have a change that says, look, in these circumstances, life or death situations, we should handle this in a completely different manner. We should treat it just like if it's a 911 call, because essentially it is. But that's going to take time. But this definitely brings up that point that we have to look at this from an overall ethical human perspective on what we can and can't do. And personally, if that were me on the other line, when I got that phone call, I would have told them the location immediately. I just couldn't. I'd be bawling myself for the family.
I would have done the same thing. Mm-hmm. However, from the technology side, do we even know that this person had the resources and the access to turn it on and find the child? Or did that have to go up the next supervisory level or two?
The next level to see who could actually make that decision. No, I think I agree with both of you.
Not only make the decision, but make it physically happen.
Possible.
Yeah. I don't have access to turn on a GPS tracking unit that's not activated. I would have to go to Amy or Christine to have that happen.
I think I agree with both of you. My heart leaps when I read something like that. My heart breaks, man. For me to even try and put myself in that situation, if it was my family with my kids, to then put myself in the shoes of an operator who receives that type of phone call, I'm pushing that button immediately. Like
Mhm.
I'm going to do what I can to try and help that family and ensure that I can do whatever as quickly as possible to make that happen. But you get
Well,
very, very close to a line that begins to touch on those things that you were saying, Kim, in terms of information. How close are we getting to that? Then, like you were saying, Lynn, who actually does have the power physically to override certain rules or regulations that have been put in place to try and cover those things? So you were talking about the technology that we have available in terms of tracking trucks and tracking vehicles. If it's off, we have to go a few levels up to even turn that thing on. So the T's and C's that apply, like you were saying, Kim, hold up in court. So that isn't something you can just play with.
Right. Right. Yeah, and the other part of that is I don't know how, the progressives of the world, because the insurance carriers, they also offer up their programs so you can get a discount on your insurance if you drive with this GPS tracking device. I'm sure that will change as we've Lynn and I have experienced. This industry is basically going OEM driven. Everything's already going to be built in, hardware, bye-bye, and it's going to be the software subscription and who you want your data fed through. And that's just the reality of the situation that we're looking at today. So eventually, Progressive will probably have relationships with manufacturers, or Geico will, whatever the case may be. And then you're going to get other players involved in this. And who do you call at that point? Do you call the OEM, or do you call your insurance provider in a situation like this? And I also don't know that these, because I have a more recent vehicle myself, and it's got tracking built in. It has AI safety in it. It's got all kinds of stuff, and I can't turn some of it off. Now, the tracking side of it, to me, it seems like it sits in a warm state is how we call it. So it's not completely inactive, but it or deactivated. It's in a warm status so that if all of a sudden I change my mind and I hit the button, it's going to turn on. If I go ahead and say, yeah, I'll do that service, there's not a lot that they have to do. It's done immediately,
Pretty much,
just like if you activate your cell phone. So, I guess that's something to consider, at least in my mind. It's just another point to discuss.
right. Also, we looked at 2 articles about the same event, and one points a finger at Verizon and the other points a finger at Volkswagen.
Right.
Verizon's the one that ultimately is going to activate or deactivate that SIM card.
Yeah,
Volkswagen's
100%.
got the authority to say, turn it on, we'll cover it. But it's something that there definitely needs to be some legislation on to clarify when something like this happens, what's it okay to do?
If this
And
happens, then
who do you
that.
contact to make it happen? And that needs to be made clear to the consumer, as well as to law enforcement, so that they do know what to do when this happens again, because it will happen again.
Oh, I 100% agree with you on that. And I think that's the direction that we're all sort of thinking, is it's going to be a legislative change one way or the other. If it gets to a federal level. And again, it's probably different in any country. And our products are worldwide. So this could be, it's not something that's necessarily going to take precedence around the world. I'm sure everybody had their 911 implementations at different times. It's just it catches on, and then it becomes something that, oh yeah, this is the right thing to do. This is, these are our citizens. We need to consider their safety, and this is the next steps to do that. But yeah, I agree 100%. I think this will lead to, especially the more and more that happens, it's going to lead to change. And I think that's ultimately what we're going to need. We need to have happen.
Does this sway closer to being a safety issue rather than this is what I feel comfortable with issue?
Personally, I think it should always be that person's safety over what is right to do or what you can or can't do because of your company policy. That's just my personal opinion because I think we should all take care of each other in times of need,
Yeah.
especially when somebody's life is at stake. But you know, it goes. I can see it from a company perspective too. Just because it is I mean, it's a tough situation.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a service that somebody's got to pay for. Okay. It's not free. It's not like it's just out there in the air.
Right.
There's
Mm.
infrastructure and technology behind it, and somebody's having to pay for that. When we
Mhm.
look at the 911 systems, that's taxpayer funded. Now, maybe some of those communications tax dollars need to go to funding this kind of service for a GPS unit that's not currently activated. That the consumer's not activated the service on essentially how they do it for the 911 on the cell phones.
Yeah, I don't know how the logistics of it. It's definitely something for them to work out. But I can tell you this right now, I kind of want to go to, my councilman start bringing this up the ladder because it's something that they need to start thinking about.
I would have to be 100% in agreement with that.
Sure. And so, how long do you think, without putting either of you on the spot, if I were to, in my mind, liken it to, and it's not the same thing, kind of just for the sake of the conversation, if I think about 30, 40 years ago, more and more cars started introducing safety belts, and safety belts were requirements, and now a car won't even start unless you're clipped in, so there was a progression that went from, well, the kids can kind of stand next to me while I drive, to no, they got to be in the maxi cozy at the back and wrapped in, and now it's so normal. At what point do you think we go, yeah, this is normal now?
Well, I certainly don't like the idea of a requirement for my vehicle to be tracked all the time or my location to be accessed at any time based on someone else's whim or choice or decision. But that seems to be the fine line that we're treading. If we're going to say in an emergency, you have to be able to locate that vehicle, that means that somebody somewhere has access to my location all the time.
Which they pretty much do. Like we were mentioning at the beginning of our discussion, we've got cameras on every angle of every road. We've got our cell phones. And I know for a fact that Google and other ads are listening because, I mean, you get on Facebook and right now I can't even find my friends or family. It's all ads. And, it's just, it is the world we live in. There is so much information that is just thrown at you. But, yeah, I don't know how the wiser wins of it. I don't know how long seatbelt programs took. I don't know because I remember that. I remember when I was a kid, you didn't even have to wear your seatbelt.
No.
And so that change happened very quickly. I mean, as a child, I was required to probably by the time I was 5 or 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So, and things happen different. It just depends on how quickly it moves up the food chain. If it starts at a state level and it has to grow in the US to the federal level to make any full-on change. And I don't know that making everybody be tracked is the right answer, but having some sort of warm status and in some way that device stays dormant until it is absolutely needed, that I am 100% on board with. So every now and then I think just with my AI in my car, I know that's not storing data anywhere, but it's still kind of creepy and it's still, it kind of Makes me feel
Mhm.
uncomfortable when my
Yeah.
car is telling me to look at the road, and I am looking at the road. So it's definitely not perfect, and it's going to be changing as time goes on. But I mean, we look at it from a driver safety standard in the fleet space. Our AI cameras are there to try and detect drowsy driving, texting while driving,
Yeah.
all of these behaviors automatically without you having to program rules to tell it to do so.
Tell it what to
Um,
do. Yeah.
so, we're getting closer and closer to that stage.
Yeah.
Mm.
The very fine line between privacy and safety and
Yeah.
security. Um, and somebody's going to have to navigate that line and come up with a set of rules uh, that are going to be acceptable to at least the majority of the population. If you don't like them, I guess you can choose to ride a bicycle.
But by having discussions like this and putting it out on the web so
Yeah.
everybody can view it or anybody can see it is a step in the right direction to trying to make some change.
Yeah. Very good.
I can tell you right now, if I were to talk to my cousin about this, he would have no idea that this happened. So until there is voice and the knowledge and people know how these situations are being handled and what is happening to people,
Mm.
they don't even know it's an issue to have the discussion about it. So hopefully we can shed a little bit of light and we can bring this to some sort of topic for people to have discussions on. And who knows, maybe there'll be some
Mm.
change. We'll have to wait and see.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's very good. I think part of these conversations, and I think part of the job of these conversations is to make us feel a little bit uncomfortable and go, yeah, I don't know I'm not sure how comfortable I am with this thing. But then you start to look at the extreme situations, a family and a mom who's pregnant and a child. And when you begin to empathize with those kinds of stories, you go, okay, maybe there is a bit of wisdom here in what it means to elevate the safety of us as a community, as individuals. What does it mean to find somebody that is lost in a stolen car? Can we find it? And I think if you ask any rational person, we've got some technology to find a person. Do you think we should use it? Yes.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
kind of
Absolutely.
where we started. Both Kim
Yeah.
and I said, had we been the ones to get that phone call, um, if I have it within uh, my, I hate it when I can't find the words. If
You
it's
would,
within my reach, if I
Yeah.
have the
yeah.
ability to find that
Yeah.
child, I'm not asking anybody anything. I'm finding the kid.
Right. And I liked your comment, Dean, about how it does make you feel uncomfortable, but disruption creates change.
There you go.
So
Very good. Exactly.
if we can get more and more people to understand this is a problem, then we can talk about, well, how do we fix it? What do we do moving forward so that another family doesn't have to go through all
Go through the
this,
same thing.
pain and
Yeah.
anxiety?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really great. Absolutely right. Yeah. Good. Any closing thoughts, ladies? That we can close this off and until the next conversation, where Fleetistics meets AI and meets yeah.
Yeah, I
future.
encourage people to have these conversations and just bring up
Absolutely.
some of these topics and see what kind of ideas might mull out there. I mean, there are what 7 billion, 8 billion of us out there, and it's enough smart people and even people who might not be the smartest, but they have really good ideas. We just need to get the information out there so that people can talk about it and understand how to move forward in the safest way possible for everybody without feeling like total Big Brother is watching you, which it feels like it is anyway.
Yeah.
Lynn, do you have anything to add or thoughts?
I'm glad this is not my decision to make for the world.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. If you've tuned in on our YouTube channel, we are going to connect some notes and both of the links that we were talking about earlier of the articles. We'll also share that in our comment section so that you can jump in and join the conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in.